You're good.
Okay. Okay, it is 6:32. We will get our meeting started. We will open with our flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Tammy, please note, we have 4 board members present. Eric, you have not heard from Cheyenne, did you?
I have not seen her yet.
She's out of the country, so she may not make it. So, mark that Cheyenne was not present. And then we have Dr. Yucca, Dr. Hoff, and Anna up here this evening, so. Okay, agenda additions, deletions, or revisions?
Madam Chair, could we add a one? Which I would like very much to be able to make a brief statement about recognizing our athletic teams this year and their amazing performance. And with that, I move to approve the agenda as amended. Second.
Okay, all those in favor of adding 1.5 for recognitions, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so we'll move on to you, Joel, for Dr. Yucca recognition.
All right, so Dr. Yeka and I came back in January, and I believe we have literally agreed on every single thing that we've discussed, except one thing. Dr. Yeka tried to get his recognition off this agenda, and Tammy and I were fully insubordinate and said we will recognize you. So I should have wrapped this better, but this is like, this is a middle-aged guy. So we were like, oh, we get Dr. Yeka a plaque, and like, he's probably got 30 plaques sitting in a box. But what Dr. Yeka does love is photos. So we got him this photo kind of thing, and it says the Yeka family, and Tammy picked out the quote, "The love of family is life's greatest blessing." So if you know, Dr. Yeka, we cannot thank you enough for stepping in and helping us out on a tough year, and it's been good, and we're so grateful for you.
Many thanks. It's been an honor to serve my community, and I'm so thankful for this year. And it's not been the easiest, but it's been a good. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll be in some more.
Right.
Doesn't happen often.
Never seen Dr. Yeka so lively and happy at a board meeting as he is at the last one.
He made it. That's the finish line. He was the same way at a gym. When Joel and I kept going over, oh, that's July, oh, that's, he's like, am I at that? Why is that on my count? Well, that's past your date. Oh, Yucca, so. Yes.
I do want to add, Dr. Yeka, when the board approached you and said, would you consider putting your name on it because things were not in great shape. We did fairly warn you that it was going to be a tough year, and you told us you were up to it. And I think you have demonstrated grace at a time when we desperately needed somebody to be graceful to everybody in the community. And it's your calm and loving presence, if I may use that word, that has marked your tenure. It's also been really enjoyable for me to watch you as each one of your additional adopted grandchildren comes along. To see, because there's a lot of them, to watch your joy in that next generation. I don't know if Susie's happy to have you back for lunch or not. I hope she is.
She says yes.
But thank you. It would not have been the year it has been without you.
I agree with that.
We'll hand it over to you.
I asked the high school to prepare something for me, because we had such an incredible year, and I just wanted to call it out at the start of the meeting. I made a mistake of asking the high school athletic director to do this instead of high school and middle school. I should have, so this is now focused on high school. But we went for the first time historically. 19 of 19 teams went to state this year. This is the first time we've ever had every single one of them go. 11 of those teams were academic, all-state, top 10, along with band and choir. We earned 6 state placing: boys cross country, boys wrestling, girls wrestling, boys basketball, boys track, girls golf, and we earned 3 state sportsmanship awards for girls volleyball, for boys volleyball, and for boys basketball. Our club sports competed at the state as well. Boys volleyball took 7th. Our Oregon High School equestrian team competed very well, and culinary had a strong showing. And rodeo just completed, well, rodeo will be competing next week. Trap Club came in 2nd regionally and top 15 in state, and 25 qualified. Of course, they're a fairly young team. So overall, it was just a tremendous year for our young athletes. There were some challenges along the way, but they had heart. They gave it their all, and we will, I mean, I can only hope we have a season like this forever and ever and ever. But I think that this year will probably go down in history for that. So yay to our team and yay to our teams. So thank you, everyone.
Yes.
So, thank you, Scott. On our public comment follow-up, one was the curriculums, and we have another update from Carrie this evening. And Dr. Skinner, she makes it, she wasn't feeling well, so, okay. An update on those, and then Holly, we are waiting to hear back in regards to some of your topics you have. Joel and I hadn't heard back at the time of setting the agenda yet. Okay, we will move on to other agencies' reports. Matthew?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Kathy McCollum. I work for the High Desert ESD, and I'm contracted with Crook County School District to do the ALO Charter School report. And we're here, we usually come in June to report on this school year. So we're reporting tonight on the 23-24 school year. There are 2 programs in Crook County that fall under my purview. One is Cal Butte Community Charter School, and we have Meredith Foley here tonight to report on that. As you know, she's going to be the new administrator next year. They don't refer to, well, they refer to their leader as an administrator, not a principal. That's their language, right? And then Josh Lagallo is here to report on the Youth Compass program from COIC in Prineville, and they're both just rock stars. I'm so proud to be here with them. But I'm proud to say also that both programs have passed all the criteria set forth in your school board regulation, in the state regulations, and so the report you have in your board packet. Thank you, Tammy, for getting that all ready for us. And also thanks to Anna Logan for the fiscal accountability. We appreciate that every year. That's really important, that part. We have a short window tonight, and I don't want to take time away from Meredith and Josh because they have so many great things to report. So we'll start with Meredith reporting on the Cal Butte Community Charter School. And Kevin Milner could not be here tonight, but he did a stellar job of putting the Cal Butte report together. It's always very impressive what he does, and he'll be missed. I'll really miss him. He's been a great administrator. So Meredith, take it away.
Well, hello again. I know that we were just together not long ago, and so I don't want to bore you all the information that we did discuss recently. But I will just give you a couple of highlights of things that we are feeling really excited about as we end the school year and move into the next. Our charter school is full for August with 220 students and many more on the wait list. And as of right now, there is no movement, which is really exciting for us to know that we are so stable. And it is unusual. We will probably lose a couple of kids when we get to September time, but for the most part, we're feeling really solid and that feels wonderful. These years post-pandemic. We're wrapping up our water focused year where all of our science and social studies content has been driven into the theme of water, and students have been out in the field literally experiencing what that means. We have middle school students teaching younger students how to catch and categorize macroinvertebrates. We've been out in many different fields of our watershed and also the Ochoco watershed, looking at what do healthy streams and rivers look like. And we've all gone fishing, and we know a lot about our local waterways and the community partners that help keep those places healthy. So did a lot of connection with ODFW this year, and we'll continue that as we move into a land theme for next year. Those are our quick place-based ed highlights for you. Happy to answer any questions at any time.
I'll just add that I was at their culmination day last Friday and it was superb. Very exciting. Lots of parents there, kids were very excited, and I got to sit in with the 7th and 8th graders and listen to their presentations, and they were so well done. I was really blown away, actually. And then I got a pie at the pie auction. It's gone, Meredith, already.
Good.
Meredith, are you on some sort of sequence? You do water, then you do land, I mean, is
And
there?
then community, it's a 3-year cycle.
Three.
Yes.
Alright.
Yes. So each grade band, K1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 will experience the content
Yes, eventually.
through those three different years at 3 different ages.
Nice.
Any other questions for Cal Butte? We'll transition to Josh then, the Youth Compass program.
I'm Josh Legallo. I manage COIC's Youth Compass program. I'm sure many of you have seen me here for many years because I've been
How many years have you been with COIC?
for 25.
25. It's
And I-
just
And I was just
crazy.
thinking the other day, I didn't run work crews in Prineville specifically. I ran them in Redmond. But when Jeff Warren hurt his knee, I ran crews in Prineville in 2000. In the year
Oh.
2000. Like before the skate park was there, like before, because I remember we built a fence over there. But anyways, yeah, that I just aged myself.
You have a history.
Yeah, so the Youth Compass program is basically a full wraparound service program for 16 to 24-year-olds. Serving Jefferson, Deschutes, and Crook County. And how we deliver that program in each location is unique to what partners need. And so in Crook County specifically, that's work training, that's employment training. So I have 2 youth employment counselors that enroll youth and run work crews. They're based out of Pioneer, which you guys give us that space for free to have office space to house both those employees. And COIC brings 2 amazing staff members that are trained, vehicles, tools, and then we leverage multiple state grants, a federal grant, so Department of Labor, WIOA, Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. In efforts to kind of fund these work crews, up to 5 youth per session, and the sessions are a little bit different. Jeff Warren, runs a maintenance crew program, so training youth typically with very little work history on projects that are on your property, on school district properties, anything from irrigation to weeding to painting the football fields, just all using those projects to teach youth, not just like occupational skills, but also like soft skills, showing up on time, phone use, just kind of like following direction from a supervisor, getting along with your peers on the job. And then also like, because of Jeff's skill set, they're also picking up some good occupational skills, for example, like the irrigation at Pioneer. His daughter, Jessica, who runs the other work crew, that's a field crew based program. So Forest Service projects, BLM, state parks. So the youth are transported out off of site, working on projects that are a little bit more labor intensive. And during the summertime, we have a specific agreement where Jeff runs a smaller, kind of older youth crew to also work on the maintenance. And then Jessica runs COIC's partnership with Heart of Oregon Corps and the Forest Service. We run Central Oregon Youth Conservation Corps. So full-time, 8 weeks, 36 hours a week as like forest conservation workers. Those grants that we leverage are able to pay the wages for the youth. Although due to demand, and Joel's a big part of that, during the winter and in the summer, Cook County School Districts reimburses us for those wages. They go back into the pot of money that we have, grant funds, to then, vehicle maintenance, tools, support services. We use quite a bit of both the federal and state dollars for support services for kids, because they want to go out and do that program, they don't have work clothes, they don't have work boots. If they're getting jobs outside of that, they might need tools, they might need knives because they're going into culinary school, they might need tuition, they might need gas. All those are qualifiable support services that are eligible under either WIOA, there's another state program called Oregon Youth Employment Program, and then another grant fund under Youth Development Division. So we kind of braid all these together, but I just want to say, like, none of it would happen without your support and advocacy. It's what we have is like a best practice in the state. And a couple of years ago, when I spoke in Portland with Joel and Dr. Johnson, yeah, their support in that room, I was getting calls from superintendents around the state. I don't even know who I'm like, you are so above my level, but they just want to know, we don't understand how you're making this work. Like, how is this happening? And so I just kind of laid it all out. It's like, when you have that kind of support and then you start pairing up and writing grants together, your success rate goes up higher and higher. So we also utilize quite a bit of those funds to do paid internships. So outside in the community, we place Pioneer youth, sometimes youth from Cook County High School, graduates that are, up to 24 years of age, that are maybe spinning their wheels and not having luck finding the career that they want. We leverage those funds. We work with local businesses. They host internships, no obligation to hire on, just to try to train a youth in veterinary, in auto mechanic, in something, just to kind of show them the way. But we did just have, I know Jessica just placed a youth at the Ford dealership as an oil tech. And so we kind of cover, we're the employer of record for 10 hours a week for 3 months. We cover that. The youth just kind of rises up, and now they just hired that youth on. And that's a great success story. We have a few of other of those, here in Cook County, but I'm trying to bring in more funding so we can do more of those internship programs. And I feel like they're worth a lot.
Josh, do you track youth employment? Do you know what percentage of kids exit the
Yeah,
system?
That's so funny. I was just at the Redmond School Board meeting, and they asked me the same thing. So not all youth are enrolled in WIOA, but probably about 85% of them are because of eligibility. So DOL tracks second quarter after exit. So think a youth gets we enroll them, we put them on a work crew, we serve them, and at some point after they get their diploma, we decide to let them loose and we put them in exit. So 6 months after exit, 76% of the youth are either in employment, military, or post-secondary. 4 quarters after, so think retention now, right? So 12 months after, we're 71% of those youth are still either, and maybe they have jumped a job, or but still their ability to kind of retain a job is, I think, reinforced by these training programs. And then they also track credentials, which is typically GED or diploma. And I think we're 67% on that. So all those exceed state standards. The credentials, it's hard. If you think about all you're talking about youth that are already disengaged and re-engaged. and getting them back and having 67% of them either reach diploma or GED within 12 months of exit.
Right, is there some intervention we could do to help you get that remaining 24%?
That's a good
What
question.
can we do?
I think you already, because you guys have a GED testing site at Pioneer. The education component is covered by Michelle and Pioneer and mostly that, so. I think the big piece there is like trying to capture students before they're so far behind, which, I mean, we all want to be proactive in that way. I think that's the big key, is because sometimes we just get an 18-year-old that has 3 credits because of whatever situation happened in their life. I feel like we do a good job of getting them trained to go into work. But at that point, they're so far behind, it's pretty difficult to motivate them. That's just one example I can think of. Pairing employment and training, or getting kids paid, like a paid internship. That's kind of the work crew model. They want to go out and work and earn money. They don't necessarily want to take their GED and go study math, but it's contingent. If they're showing up 100% of the time for work, but they're blowing off class, Michelle and Jeff communicate, and Jeff will say, "You're not going out today. You have to stay in class." And that kid's like 6.5 hours times $15 an hour. Yeah, it's costly money, and it works for some of them.
Minus 28% with the government.
Exactly, yeah, of course, which some of them, like, we sign them up and do payroll, they're like, "Oh, I don't do the tax thing." You know, I work under the table, it's like, dude, it's federal dollars, like, you have to fill out an I-9, and you need to learn.
I don't do that.
But yeah, that contingent, it works for, a good percentage of those hardworking kind of rural kids that really want to work, they like it, they feel more themselves when they're out working and earning a wage, but they don't necessarily feel themselves, when they pre-test a math GED at 136.
Any other questions for us?
I just want to follow up to that. If you go back and you have second thoughts about other things we could do, know that this seat's always open to you.
Thanks,
And
I appreciate that. It usually comes to me at like 3:30 in the morning.
It's had that experience.
Yeah.
All of you have been so supportive, and Dr. Yeka stepping in has been incredibly supportive, and Joel always is supportive, and we're so happy you're back. And a good partner with Josh and Meredith. Thank you very much, everyone.
Madam Chair, I move to accept the report of the attorney. Madam Chair, I move to accept the SD contract and charter school evaluation report as presented. Second.
All those in favor of accepting the High Desert ESD contract and charter school evaluation report as presented, say aye. 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 Any opposed? We'll mark that. Consent agenda.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda.
I second. Really, on the consent agenda paper, we have a 414 that's not on the agenda itself.
It was emailed.
Yeah.
Maybe it was in there.
Agenda.
You didn't get a copy of it? Here, I'm getting my copy.
No, I have one.
It's listed on the consent agenda.
So there's a second one.
That's not older. Your printing is older than your starting agenda.
It's just.
Oh, you know what it did? It's just a number. it auto formatted and changed it to 413.1, when it should be 414, and mine says 414. So,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Well, they all have 414.
Well, we do too.
I'm not ready to return yet. So. Okay, I'm sorry, did we have a second on that?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All those in favor of accepting the consent agenda as is, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We'll turn the time over to you, Carrie.
Come on up with me, Julie.
The one thing that Dr. Yucca and I disagree on is the temperature in this room.
Agreed.
Do you leave an icicle? Because I can feel my fingers on my toes by the end of the meetings in this room. It's fun. No, and so it's a safe place to say that whenever he walks out of the room, I go over and I put it up a little bit. I wasn't able to do that here tonight, so I'm sorry. The first night we were here, and they slid me over a box of Kleenex, I'm like, my nose is just frozen. But everything else, I appreciate, Dr. Young. I want to introduce, for those of you who don't know, Julia Newhouse is here next to me. She is a middle school science teacher, currently teaches 6th grade, but taught 8th grade for many years. So I appreciate that she is here to help me answer any questions that you may have that I am not familiar enough to, or an expert to be able to answer. The other thing that I want to say is Jake and Rob, nice job at graduation. I haven't gotten a chance to tell you that. And the scholarship awards night, if it hasn't been reported out, our kids received about $450,000 of scholarships. Probably 85% of those are community-based scholarships. So that is incredible. So I wanted to point that out.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So Julie and I are here to give a science update. Eric, do you have the presentation? Okay. And you guys have it in your packets as well. There were a few last minute changes, so I think that when I made some changes, I think Tammy got you the most updated copy, but if not, we'll work through that. All right. So first of all, Julie's here. Thank you. Julie has done incredible work around this curriculum adoption and review process. She serves as the middle school benchmark coordinator. And without her, we wouldn't have the comprehensive information that we have. So appreciate you, Julia. All right, so next slide. So the 3 pieces, and Dr. Skinner, I think will pop on here at some point too. But the 3 reasons we brought science back, or asked to bring science back, are about to review the process of curriculum review and adoption, to hopefully move forward for a July adoption. Where we are for science data currently in our district, and then where we want to go for science in that vertical alignment piece. So just really quickly, we've done this before, but on the next slide, the curriculum review timeline and process. So this is really just a reminder, not much new information here, but to go through the process review. We begin in November when ODE approves or releases their approved material. We move through as quickly as we can, starting in December, to gather our selection committee for them to prioritize their needs and wants around a curriculum. In January, they attended, many of them attended a science caravan. They attended 12 sessions out of the 15 total ODE materials or ODE approved materials. In February, we had a follow-up meeting where they narrowed down their choices to 3 top curriculums. And in February, we ordered samples, began reviewing. I say that that's a they. I ordered, they began reviewing. And in March, final preferences and rankings were made. In March and April, community and committee review happened, where Julia and her team of science teachers came into this room with our review committee and presented their top choice of curriculum, the pieces to it, what they liked about it, what they might have wished it had, and then gave the community time to give some feedback. And then board approval, ordering, and PD schedule is where we usually will go next. So Last time you guys asked for a little bit more specifics about what the committee feedback was, from April 18th. So we had 7 total members of the review committee, which is different than the selection committee. 6 were in person and 1 submitted their feedback via email. 3 recommended do not adopt based on controversial topics. So these were a couple of the quotes. It seems it's promoting an agenda, a very global agenda. And again, this was style. Promotes one correct answer instead of truly allowing multiple perspectives, would recommend amplify instead. 1 recommended adopt with restrictions and advised to provide alternative viewpoint lessons that need to reinforce critical thinking skills and look at and encourage preventing various theories. And then 3 recommended to adopt based on teacher recommendation and topics presented. So those quotes were lesson topics are relevant to current events and topics. I like how students can discuss the topic and learn others' perspectives. And I would recommend styles with being neutral on current global topics. So next, when Dr. Skinner came in May, she opted or elected to meet with our science selection committee, knowing that we had had some disagreements about style and wanted to ask them kind of what they liked about style, where they wanted to go with this, and whether they were still thinking style was a good curriculum. Stop me if I'm wrong on any of this.
I'm doing great.
So she came and we had a morning meeting, and in order to say like, hey, the selection committee said that this is gonna be a good curriculum, but we know we have a few things that we need to address in here. What might be a path forward for style for you? What would you like to see happen? So we gave them a few options, Dr. Skinner and I, to adopt style with teacher modifications and or deletions for controversial topics, adopt style and get supplementary or replacement from a current curriculum like STEM scopes for those areas that might be controversial or contentious. And option 3, style with supplementary kits from a company called FOSS or other hands-on materials. Unanimously, the teacher said, we like option 1. Style with teacher modifications and deletions for controversial topics, working with myself and Dr. Skinner and as a team and going through the curriculum and creating or adding or deleting or supplementing some of those places in style that were the most, that people had the most concerns with. And some of the quotes that they gave back were style is changeable, editable, and adaptable to personalize the entire curriculum. Style best meets the criteria we set for helping our students meet standards.
Gary,
Yeah.
I want to raise, I think there's a missing option up there.
Okay.
And that option is purely adopt style.
Right.
This board gave no direction as to what to do or how to restrict or limit or otherwise. That's still on the table. and yet to be
Absolutely.
decided. So
Right.
I think there's actually.
Okay, yeah, I would agree. Yeah, and knowing that with option 4, just adopting style, that teachers will look at curriculum and make modifications as they need anyway to meet the needs of the students that they have in front of them, so I would agree. Yeah. So what's next, and then I'll take a break and ask Dr. Skinner if she wants to add anything in, or Mrs. Newhouse, or if you guys have any questions. But what's next? So here are some of the possibilities that we can do, and also what's next just in terms of science in general. So we can, if style is or is not the curriculum, we can, as a group, continue to look at other curriculums. Carolina is one that, again, the work of Julia, like last minute, like, hey, what do you think about this one? And she probably spent hours saying like, yep, let me go through the process. Let me look at, let me do as deep of a dive as I can into this curriculum and see where it meets our needs. And so we can continue to do that with a selection committee. The one piece about, if we want to continue looking at other curriculums, that will mean that we need to postpone this option for a year. With that comes many different things. It comes with what do we do in the meantime, because our digital licenses expire at the end of June. So it will mean that they will need something. We can do a 1-year of STEM scopes. If we decide that style is not the curriculum, it means starting the process over again in order to follow policy. So those are the pieces. we can have just a successful adoption in July, either using the options that we talked about on the other page or just adopting style for our middle school curriculum and moving forward. No matter what, we will allow and offer time for our middle school science team to do some summer planning for the curriculum work. So whether that means looking at some of those concerning places or whether it just means dive in, look at the curriculum, see what looks reasonable in terms of a timeline, and what people will be teaching. Teachers always appreciate that. A little further in the future, but not too far, we are gonna do that work in August around vertical alignment between elementary and middle school. So what does it look like as kids leave elementary and come into middle school? What do our middle school teachers hope that they have, want them to have, and in what ways will they have that? We've actually already started that work just in the last couple of weeks. Let's look at some standards. Let's look at how elementary kids are looking at those standards. Let's prioritize what middle school would really like them to be doing as they come in. And then also along with that vertical alignment between middle school and high school, because I know there was some questions about like, oh, yep, elementary will be using this curriculum, middle school might be using this curriculum, high school has chosen this curriculum, the publishers are not the same. How does that look as kids transfer? So we've definitely made it a priority to make sure that although the curriculum companies or publishers are not the same, that kids are still able to access the work that meets the standards, which is really what guides us no matter what curriculum we have, is the standards. We want kids to be successful on standards, regardless of whether we think that is best done with the state tests that they get at the end of 5th grade year and the end of 8th grade year, or whether that is based on the local assessments that our teachers use. So I will stop talking for a minute. We'll see if Julie wants to add anything, if you guys have any questions, or if Dr. Skinner wants to add anything.
Quick question for you. If we were to look across the state in other school districts, is it more common for elementary, middle, and high school to have different curriculum, or for them to all have a same curriculum? What's the pattern?
It is not my experience in talking with other districts that elementary, middle, and high school have similar or even the same. Many publishers only have a curriculum that is designed for K through 5 or 6 or 9 through 12, or even if they have. So like the high school's choice is inspired by McGraw-Hill, and they have a 6 through 8 version. But if you look at where those where those curriculum writers are and where the publishing companies are, they are not housed in the same building. Like these are, yes, under the same big publisher clearinghouse, but they are not the same teams of people working to create a middle school curriculum and a high school curriculum. So it is my experience, they do not go through the process to pick something that aligns vertically in for curriculum.
Thanks.
What does styles for hands-on and labs if you're not gonna, if the option one is to style a teacher modifications, I believe they were the ones lacking the hands-on lab parts.
Actually, Style has what they call lab kits. So they do have kits. They're an additional offering inside Style. As does FOSS, as does many other curriculum companies out there sell lab kits that you can use, but Style has them as well that you can buy inside the curriculum.
Are we looking at purchasing those with?
I have a quote that lets us know how much those cost inside, and I also have a quote from FOSS, which their curriculum is not a textbook-based curriculum. Their curriculum is, their materials are around hands-on lab kits. So they send you the box and say, here's a lab that you can do for this piece of information or this lesson or this unit. And then you get to add it in however you see fit, but there's nothing inside a FOSS curriculum that says, like, turn to page 4. Oh, here's the lab that you're doing in this like kind of textbook model. So those exist all over. Getting a hands-on
element or a supplement to Style, whether it's through Style or through another company, is not not something that's a barrier.
And where does Style come in with the, our data and standards for science?
So they are a standard curriculum in the same ways that all the other ones are. In order to be approved by the Oregon Department of Education, that is one of the things that they have to do. They have to be standards based. So Style is based on the next generation science standards, which Oregon adopted in 2014 and then again readopted in 2022. And so Style is based, their curriculum is based on those standards.
I meant our data, like our kids where they're when we had that Friday meeting, there were certain criterias or I guess grade points, and we weren't doing well in some of those. So does this help with those?
So I think a couple of slides ahead, we'll get to that.
Carrie, can I jump in a little bit? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we are, yeah, definitely want to look at the data for sure. So one of the things that I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about tonight is just thinking about if we stray too far away from the Oregon rigorous science standards, we really do run the chance of not providing a standards-based curriculum that, you know, really all of our students need. So potentially they might not perform at high levels. So with only a small percentage actually testing, and we'll kind of look at that in a minute, it's hard to determine what interventions or even core lessons or enrichments, you know, that our scholars are going to need to be provided. So when we utilize this data, of course, we want to make, you know, and drive instructional decisions with our data points. However, with such a low number of students testing, it's really only one data point. So we really want to look at both qualitative and quantitative metrics to be reviewed. So when we listen to the teachers, that's, you know, qualitative, like observations and what are kids really needing. And then when we look at the data, you know, obviously that's qualitative and that's really that data point. So I really enjoyed my time meeting with the middle school teachers. That was my very first meeting, 8 o'clock in the morning, Monday morning, when I was there, and they expressed, you know, that they are more than willing, you know, to do that curriculum writing this summer that addresses those alternative viewpoints. That's really been discussed in numerous forums as really the concern regarding styles. If this adoption is about ensuring that we delete lessons or we write or rewrite alternative viewpoint lessons, I can certainly make that happen. But if the underlying issue is who funds the materials, that's something that I cannot fix. So I know that's a discussion and something we're really going to have to dig into a little bit, because we can definitely make it happen with those 3 or 4 options. If that's something that we want to move forward with. I also met with 5th grade science teachers to ask them how much time is spent on science and what they are currently utilizing to ensure the alignment between what is taught and what is tested. So I asked them in that meeting if we could find 45 minutes in their day to spend specifically teaching science concepts. I'm a really big proponent, huge proponent of integrating science and literacy. However, with a high stakes test, it's going to take that integration plus dedicated science instruction that's aligned to that rigorous assessment. So in doing this, I think we need to ensure that we are also looking at our 5th grade teachers and making sure that they have what they need to teach those science standards as well. I told them we would start out small and we'd more in each year, that's going to really lend itself to that alignment that we're talking about, 5th going into 6th, and then of course middle school going into high school. So I really believe that FOSS kits or mystery science kits will be a viable option for a 5th grade supplement, because that's going to provide those hands-on experiences and experiments for all 3 of those major areas that we're going to look at for the data. But I guess my biggest thing is if we want to be, it kind of comes back to some of the things we've talked about. The #1 district in Oregon, we have to provide our teachers with high quality materials that are aligned to the state standards. I don't want to look at scores at the end of the year and wonder why they're low, but you know, we can certainly look at other resources. Carrie mentioned Carolina. That's one of the things companies I talked to her about as well. That's on the list. They are long standing. I used them in the early 2000s. They've been around for a very long time. So they definitely have credibility also. But I just think with this being said, that's going to have to go through that process, meaning teachers wouldn't have resources this year until that occurred. So I don't know, Carrie, you want to kind of look at the science data now so we can, you know, maybe make some determinations as to where we're at with like 5th grade and then middle school? on into high school.
Yeah, we'll get there. The other thing I brought that I didn't include was if anybody wants the copy of the 2022 Oregon Science Standards, I have those. So it goes, and that's K through 12. So if you guys want those now or later, totally fine. Right here, I'll just get them up. There's a lot. There's a big packet, everybody. Nice
Thanks.
handwriting. Yeah.
Thanks, Carrie. I think that'll be helpful.
All right, moving on. So the next slide is really about, if we like style and we think that some parts of it need adjusting. And I think you could probably say this about any curriculum, if we like Carolina and we think any parts of it need adjusting, because it leaves something out, it doesn't have alternative viewpoints, or just know our kids need more based on our data. Any of these things are probably gonna be available in any other curriculums. So go ahead, Eric. So for instance, this is a screenshot from Style. The one on the left, that kind of lab rate meet, that little introductory section of the cells unit. Style allows you to just not do the introductory part or to change the introductory part. You can make it a different question. Or you can leave it out altogether and you could just then go on to 1.1, 1.2, which are living or non-living, the building blocks of life, one cell or many. Get out your microscopes, look at plant cells, look at animal cells. And if you wanted to do a little experiment or more than one experiment around this, then certainly, we can make that happen.
So where does that decision occur? When you say this allows us to not to, who's the us, the individual teacher?
Yes,
Who makes the decision to just omit that part of the teacher's guide?
yes,
To change what the students can see.
yeah, it changes the student facing platform.
And is that, or we can do that, or we can do that this summer during curriculum writing, and we all agree that that's the way that it's going to be, so that all students have that same, platform.
Experience. Yep.
That's something I don't think I understood, I don't know if the public understood it, that this is all delivered electronically now, not through a printed permanent textbook. Which is where the flexibility comes in to alter.
Yeah, you can buy the workbooks. Our science teachers have said that like, oh yeah, you can print those digitally as well. So buying just separate workbooks may or may not be the easiest, but in the workbooks, these were not the pieces that were there anyway. The workbooks were more about vocabulary and essential questions. And so they have a place, but they didn't really have any of the pieces that people were concerned about. So
And do you think the citizen review committee that raised some concern about this understood that the power of that to edit?
I think Julia did a good job in her review, in her presentation for the review committee. But people who were on the review committee might have a better indication of whether that came through or not.
So like, for instance, on this question, what was brought up is, this was the one that was a leading question. It didn't ask, would you eat lab grown meat? It asked if you would eat lab grown meat to have a better,
More sustainable,
protein or
right, more
something.
sustainable.
is there a way to just limit it to, would you eat lab grown meat? Like, you wouldn't have to get rid of the whole unit. That's a thing, and it's not in the, it's not in Europe, that's banned, but here it's a thing, right? So it's not to say that this isn't a topic within the world today. I agree with that, but the question that was asked was not for a kid to just say yes or no. It was, well, do you want to be stronger? Do you want to, like my kid was like, yeah, more protein. Yeah. Yeah, and how do you want that protein,
yes.
So I guess in a sense, you don't necessarily, I mean, it sounds like you can get rid of the whole topic, but I think the biggest thing that I got out of committee members that I had heard from was that it was a leading question as opposed to just letting a student, say, yes, I would, or no, I wouldn't. It was, then it had more to it. So is that also?
Yeah, and I think if you, Eric, if you want to go to the next one, you can see. So like, you can see that this little guy, he asks a question on the top. I put an arrow to the edit. So the question that he asks, or this little piece says, one of the main causes of climate change is increasing carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, but carbon is also continually moving all around us as a part of a natural cycle. So if you're like, ooh, man, there are many you know, many people have different views about what causes climate change or what impacts it has or what percentage of this causes this. You could change this to carbon is a unique element that is found in all living organisms. Carbon is continually moving all around us as part of a natural cycle, much like water. So you could do that with the lab raised meat as well. Just change it so it sounds like it's a little bit more open, or waits a little bit till you get into the unit before you kind of bring up those pieces.
Or connects it to another unit, just like the water cycle, so.
Of course, you also could take the bottom statement and change it to the top statement.
Absolutely.
And I think, you know, the end part of this debate is how much do we want to trust our teachers to do the right thing? Because if we're gonna train and turn them on robots, let's get rid of them and hire robots.
No, we don't want to do that. No, I think that is. We have a selection committee who who went through curriculum and they like it because it's editable for student need and student growth. But not just to go through and try to make it as
Biased.
biased or biased as possible, or clean up all those pieces. Instead of saying like, oh man, look what this asks. It seems to be asking kind of a leading question. And what does that make us think about? And why would be the reasons it does that? And I think for my social studies background, we do that a lot, right? People write things and they write things from their views and their perspectives, and sometimes we need to question those. And then one other change that can be done, and you see this again in the teacher facing. So for any reasons for time, sensitive pieces, if kids aren't ready for some topics, you can hide certain things from certain students. So if you need to give extensions and some kids are ready for 4.2, you can give that to some kids. If some kids need review, they're not ready for that. Maybe they need to go back and do, you know, talk about herd immunity or whatever that looks like. You can hide things from students, or you can deliver things to certain students, or you can deliver them to all your students. And I think that's the work that as a team, that they are going to be really good at figuring out what kids need and how to deliver that based on the kids in front of them. As Juliet pointed out, you know, we have our fifth graders that are going to be sixth graders next year. We have over 20% that are coming into sixth grade with IEPs, so individual education plans. Our curriculum will need to be ready to support kids who have different learning needs, who have different reading levels. And so finding a curriculum that allows us to do that and still give them grade level information so that they are not always behind, right? Like, so that they're not learning fourth grade standards at sixth grade and eighth grade standards, you know, in 10th grade. You need to be able to do that.
I want to come back to what you said, and
Yep.
just make sure I understood that right. 20% of incoming sixth graders are on IEP. That
Yeah,
was the-
Grant, yes.
So just to clarify too, like on 4.1 where it says all students, you get a roster and pick 12 instead of 28.
From each period, and you choose who can see it and who can't.
So how does that work for grading? The kids that don't get 4.1, that's not in their grade book, or do they get a 0 for not doing 4.1, or?
I think, in my experience, you always are kind of grading based on your standards. And so there's multiple ways in each unit to grade on standards. And so 4.1 may not be a standards-based grade. It may be an extension. It may be for kids who have met that standard and have a day where other kids are still making up their labs or getting some background information, and 4.1 might be something that they get as an extension. That's how I see most of that learning, and generally with extensions, like it's graded or not, most of the time it's not graded, not in my world. It's just yeah. Continue being curious, go forth.
So how would you depict grades with this program if you have split classrooms? How do you do that?
I'd say is that teachers work through, you prioritize the things that every kid must leave your room with. Because as you can see from that packet of standards, every kid, there is no way to get every kid, every standard in there. I think there was some statistic that said, like even with the ELA standards, if you were really gonna teach every kid, every standard to proficiency level, you would be teaching third grade for 3 years. Right? There's just so many standards in there. And so as a team, they're really good about prioritizing what are the things that kids have to have in order to be successful on our assessments, in order to have the knowledge that they need to go on to the next grade and have the knowledge that they need to be, functioning, thinking, people about the world around us. And so you make sure every kid gets that, right? And then there are times where some kids have the opportunity to do a little extra digging. Or they'll have a little extra information. So I don't see it, just as two separate classrooms, like two separate tracks inside a classroom. I see it as this being an opportunity, for when kids are ready and their classmates may not be, to have a small group of kids that are go forth and read this article or do this simulation. And as a teacher, I'm gonna continue supporting kids, in the timeline that they need it. So maybe they won't get to 4.2, and that's okay.
Seems very flexible.
100%.
And being in the classroom, that's nice.
Yeah.
Because what I'm hearing from you guys, that's huge. If you have 20% coming in with IEPs, it's gonna be huge for you, it's gonna be huge for the other adults in that classroom. To be able to know, hey, we're gonna work on this, but you're gonna take this group over here and you're gonna be able to work on this.
To be able to change it to that other group.
Exactly. Yeah, to me, that's absolutely huge, the flexibility. I really like that.
How does this, being able to do this compared to what you use now?
Light years different. Well, topics are more relevant, the ability to change things,
Even, yeah, everything, the little few things we've looked here already, it's not an option really at this point right now with what we have.
they have different Lexile levels for individuals who can have a higher Lexile of reading, that. And again, we can take away things that the students can see on their end, but nothing to the fact of within each individual lesson to change it, manipulating it to their needs,
Not an option.
not an option.
This is kind of amazing in a way. For years, there's been criticism that we just teach the textbook.
Yeah.
Now, you're so empowered as a teacher, you better teach, because you don't have any excuse not to.
Exactly.
With this, that's amazing.
Yeah.
It really is putting our teachers back at the center of what our kids are learning.
Yeah, you know the kid, you
We know the
understand where
kids.
they're at. And
Exactly.
what works best for them to fit there.
Yeah.
We're very empowering as a teacher.
You want to be one, maybe.
Okay, so that, and again, these are all screenshots from Style, which again was the selection committee's #1 choice. The review committee had mixed feelings about this, as Dr. Skinner talked about. Is the curriculum, or is it who, funds the curriculum? Where is it that what issue are we trying to solve, or what main idea are we trying to get at? And if it's getting at, curriculums that come out of a certain place or funded by a certain group, we're just not gonna get away from that in science so much. Actually, probably most other curriculums, the big publishers. Somehow they are, all connected, and as much as we might like some other options, this is what we have. Actually, I don't know if we'd like other options. I like this option. I was going through it and I was like, man, this would be really cool to have. I've learned more about, this curriculum and teaching science than I would have otherwise been able to. So, been cool.
So Carrie, I think just for a follow-up for me, so we don't have to deep dive into it all night long, but I think my concern would be with adjusting to classrooms like I have a child on an IEP and I have a child in a tag program. They're very close in age, and I have one in an honors class and one in regular. And I watch them do the same packets of paper. And to me, I don't understand why one that's on an IEP is doing the same paper as my honors student who's getting a different credential. Or basically in a sense the same class. So my concern would be that I don't know if you have an overall, like you said, standards that everyone does. I understand that, but I don't know that it's necessarily the right thing to do to just say, well, you get 4.1 because you did all your assignments. And so here's extra work.
It's not necessarily extra work, it's deepening their understanding of a topic. So they're given maybe a challenge question, or that allows them to say, okay, if for your tag student, they have that ability to go deeper and to understand material more and engage with it more. Whereas your IEP student could benefit from taking away other things.
Yeah, I think, just to get at that, I think that is district level work around all, and curriculum and instruction. To be able to differentiate for our different learners. Some of the curriculum that we have, like Scott kind of alluded to, like, here's your textbook, here's your curriculum, it's not editable. So in order to differentiate, it really requires a teacher to go out and be like, okay, what's a different article, with a different reading level that I can give? Can I find it? Can I read it? Can I make sure everything's okay? Can I work with my kids? I think the new curriculums that we're seeing really allow for you to do that, and actually even suggest ways in doing that. So I would agree that our students who are different need different things. And yet they all need access to quality grade level essential work. Because that is what will make them successful at the next phase. So I want to do that work with teachers around all curriculums and all subjects to make sure that that gets better. Anything else, Dr. Skinner, before we move on to the data?
No, I think looking at the data will help us kind of level set.
All right, so what we're gonna see on the next couple of pages. Go ahead, one more. I really like having a Vanna White. So what might be different in your packet that I'm hoping got updated is that your packet might have 22-23 information, because as I was putting this together, our students hadn't completely finished taking their state OSAS assessments. Those hadn't been reported. So updated on here are just really some snapshots, some screenshots around OSAS data, around science specifically. So we see at this time that I took this data, which was early last week, I think that you guys were all done at 8th grade, is that it compares state data to district data to school data. And so 26% of students across the state either were at meets or exceeds on the science test at 8th grade. Our district was at 31%, and then school was at 30%. So the difference in the district and school is that we have some students at Grizzly Mountain Homelink that would also take this test, and a few others here and there, like in Paulina. There are 8th graders out in Paulina that take it. They're not captured in the CCMS data. So we're above the state average, which is always a highlight. But as we point out, like 30%, we're having at the state level, 26% of it, the kiddos be proficient or above proficient, meets or exceeds on the state test is not ideal. As Scott's pointed out before, like this is a red flag about some things, right? Some things about the test, some things about potentially really makes us curious about that. But at the high school, the one arrow that I wanted to point out is that at the high school this year, we only had 42 kids opt in or not opt out of taking the OSAS tests. And so of those 42 kids that took it, still above the state by about a percentage point. No, that's not a very big sample compared to all the amount, or compared to the 11th graders that typically take this. But in this, if you dive down, you'll see that there are some 10th graders and some 11th graders who take this depending on their sequence of classes.
What would that number be if everybody took it?
If everybody took it at the
Who was
end of,
supposed to take it?
their 11th grade year, and again, science is a little bit different, there would be about 200 and I think there's 224 current juniors or something like that. It's close to that. Yeah, lots of opt-out paperwork. And I think even more opt-out of ELA and math than science. Science requires a little different form. Okay. And on the next page, so 5th grade. Oh, and I didn't take out the will update once testing is complete. I actually probably should, because testing just did get finished at Crooked River today. They had a couple of students. And so that data may change, but not super drastically. So state 31%, our district, for science is 28%. So as Dr. Skinner kind of pointed out, we recognize that this is an ideal. We recognize that our 5th and 4th and 3rd grade science teachers across the district maybe haven't always had the time built into their schedule to teach science as a standalone, or have had the curriculum or resources to be able to do that, and we are going to address that. I would say slowly but surely, but I actually think that because of our 5th grade teachers' interest in doing this and excitement around doing this, that we will see results once they have the time dedicated and the curriculum and resources dedicated to be able to teaching science on a regular basis. Julie's already worked with them. They're interested in doing interactive notebooks. And that way they can work with the data. When I have asked our 5th grade teachers, and when Dr. Skinner's asked our 5th grade teachers, like, what is it about this test? And they said, our kids need to be able to do something with data. Like, you have to be able to graph, and you have to be able to do data tables, and you have to be able to look and experiment and plot that information in this test. It is a tough test because it asks you to do that. And we don't give our kids enough practice at doing that. And so kind of like, how does 6th grade do that? And let's replicate some of those pieces that they're doing. So I'm excited about that work.
And it sounds like if you're doing INBs in 5th grade, that's just gonna help them on into 6th grade and on up. So get them started a little bit early. So it's not so foreign for them.
So
We have just.
would you use this curriculum at the 5th grade level, or how are you gonna integrate that?
So right now, our elementary school uses mystery science, which they like, but it's been kind of like, oh, pick something here and pick something there as you've had time. So along with the curriculum work that we'll have middle school do, 5th grade teachers will also be able to do that, to get into mystery science and say, what is it that we need to do? And that we'll show you on some data on the next couple of pieces. Where are our focus areas? What lessons definitely should we be doing? What experiments definitely should we be doing? How do we capture that in an interactive notebook so that kids are looking at data, manipulating data, capturing data, having reflections on what the data is telling them. Yeah. And also working, OSAS offers, they call them interim assessment tests or practice tests inside their system. And like we do for math and ELA, kids have options to take those kids take those practice tests throughout the year to be ready. And we will start doing that systematically with the science as well. So, let's see what that test looks like ahead of time.
Familiar with the interface.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a tough one.
You know, Carrie, I would encourage you and the admin team to go back this summer and have a conversation with yourselves, a hard conversation. About the fact that we keep hearing about low testing rates. You just brought it up, it was brought up in the last discussion. One of the reasons parents opt out is, first of all, we make it very easy. We send them a letter and say, don't you want to sign this? Secondly, if you ask any administrator, and I say this because I did, you will be told there's no reason that I can give you why your children should participate in this testing. Well, if you tell me that, I'm not gonna put my kid through testing. If it's important, that's the first question. I challenge the admin team to decide, is it important? And if it is important, then what is your messaging as to why it is important? And then thirdly, how are you gonna distribute that messaging? Because right now, the opposite is going out. Parents are just doing what we've asked them to do.
Yeah.
And that's opt out. So if we don't feel like that anymore, let's turn that around. But I think
agree.
that's summer work. for
Yeah.
the team.
I agree, and I think Dr. Skinner wholeheartedly agrees, that I can't give your kids, I can't meet them where they're at if I don't know where they're at. if this is an assessment that we're gonna use, so.
I think that it's changing, I think it's changing that narrative of, we have to get a baseline. So for me, as the incoming superintendent, if I don't have a baseline, I can't provide the most appropriate interventions, core lessons and or enrichment, because I really don't have an understanding of where your child is at if we're always opting out. So I'm really hoping that we can change the narrative of why we assess children so that we can understand where they're at, so we can best meet their needs. We can't use data to guide instructional decisions if we don't have data on your child. So once we have that data, we can then, make those instructional decisions. So, and again, it's matching up those resources as well. So, everyone, the 5th grade teachers, the middle school teachers that I've met with, they're all in with wanting to have the most robust materials. But again, our kids aren't testing. So when we get this data sample, we have, 42 kids that are testing, we don't know if we're truly below the state or 1% above the state. We could be blowing it out of the ballpark for all I know, or we could be, really, really, really below. So we have to get that baseline to see where we truly are in comparison to the state.
But let me challenge you back on that, Dr. Skinner, because first of all, is state baseline what we really value? Do we think that's important? I heard Carrie earlier say, well, we could use the state assessment or we could use teacher assessments and local assessments. Okay, well, we can't use that. Well, which one to use? Just tell us where the goalpost is. I cannot get the goalpost to one for one.
Right.
We can't hit it with it off.
Well, I think it's multiple data points. I think that's why I was referring to qualitative and quantitative. I think when we're looking at the whole child, it's all pieces of data, not just one test on one day is saying that your child can or cannot, perform on certain, concepts or content. So I believe that it is one data point, but it is an important data point that I think we should look at. If we have the right materials and we're teaching, I should say, the correct standards.
So else, do you have a test like that you could refer to that isn't just like Scott's saying, where we might have one that you might see different results as a in-house test, or
Make one.
not trying to create more
No,
work,
I
just wondering if it
appreciate that.
exists.
But
No,
absolutely doing benchmarking, yeah.
Yeah. Not one that gets a full picture, unfortunately. What I teach, sure. What 7th grade teach, they have something. What 8th grade teaches, they have something, but something that encompasses things they learned in 5th grade and their whole middle school career.
We have been looking at some streamlined testing. That would be K-12. One of the options is MAP, which provides reading, math, and science. So, I think it's something that we are looking at because we do need to have some benchmarking, beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year, that is the same no matter the grade level, so that it is asked somewhat similar. Obviously, the concepts and content is getting more and more challenging and more rigorous, but if we use the same type of assessment, you tend to get lean into the same type of data.
Something we've been focusing on within the last couple of years is argumentative writing. And that is very similar across the grade levels, is to see how are they doing with adding the vocabulary into this argument? How are they doing with claims? How are they doing with showing their evidence for specific topics? So that is something that we can absolutely look at, but content-wise.
Is there any data on why people are opting out? If I don't learn the list.
I would say it's a lot of what Scott said. As parents, it's more of the derivative you're given.
Just because I don't want you to.
Well, it's,
What's
why
the
put your kid through a test if you're, it's like Scott said, it's literally like, I can't give you a good reason your kid should take this exam. Why would I make my kid sit down and take an hour-long test as a parent? I'm finding something else to do.
And why do we test in the 11th grade? It is the worst year. It is an awful year for kids, especially our area kids that are taking 5 AP tests in addition to this high stakes test. And we talked to the AP committee about maybe redistributing some of that classwork. So it's not quite so intense, that awful year.
Yeah. And I think
It is a
that's,
test every 2 weeks, I swear.
I think that's why if you go back or if you dive into that OSAS science test, what we say it'll it's an 11th grade. But when we look at the distribution, we see quite a few 10th graders. But it is one of the ways that they've tried to push that 10th grade test back a little bit, but it really depends on the sequence of classes. We know that the 11th grade test encompasses earth science, physical science, and life science, which kids would need to have had access to all those content to reasonably be able to do well. And for many kids, they don't have that until after their 3rd year of science. Some kids have it after their 2nd year of science because they come into biology, and their sophomore year, they take chemistry, and you hope that they remember their 8th grade enough to do pretty well on some of the others, or their 7th and 8th grade to do pretty well on some of the others. So we have tried to move the science, but we also can't have a 10th grader sit for a test that we know that they haven't had a year of content that they've been able to access.
And some historical context here that's really important is it was in the middle of, I want to say it was 2020, the state suspended. These used to all be tied to the essential skills requirement that students had to demonstrate proficiency their junior or senior year. The state eliminated that. We tried to set up kind of our own internal, but then another element to this to keep in mind is the state also, the legislature requires us to send a 30-day letter to parents legally 30 days prior to testing to say, here's your opt-out form, let us know if you want to. So there are some elements to this that are outside of our control, but I think, Scott, to your point, we need to have a conversation and get our own internal communication. And in reality, so at the 5th grade, 217, that's probably above 90%. So there's no problem there. That's good data. The 8th grade's at 187. I thought I saw the number on there. That's 89%. So that's very valid. It's just at this high school level where we saw the 42. Well, that's, yeah. So we're way down there. So I think that's where we need to really target some efforts, is that communication to those high school parents. And also what we talked years ago when they started rolling this out is we have to make these meaningful to students and families. And if we as a district can't say why, then why would you put your junior through this when they're taking 5 AP tests and an ACT and an SAT? So
Was there an AP credit that's equivalent to those difference?
OSAS, so this is just a state of Oregon thing. So there's no credit tied to it.
But I'm saying if you have a credited class that might cover those topics, can you add that into an AP course and say, hey, we covered earth science, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. That would be a way to collect data with a class that a kid is already taking. For the reason they're taking it is for the college credits, and then you're still gaining data. I mean, I don't know if that's.
Or
College-
you could even add 2 credits to the graduation requirements, make it 30 instead of 28. And say, if you get, pass or advance on the state testing, then we'll give you those 2 credits back. And if you aren't, why are you graduating? Because I do believe in essential skills, unlike the state of Oregon. If you don't know what you're doing, why are you graduating?
And we are looking at, if you guys do remember as a board goal, we are doing that ASVAB. So we've piloted that, and we'll dig into some data on that as well to also kind of have that measure to say, are our kids graduating, ready for the real world. So those are all in the works, and you can see this all kind of webs together, and it's important for us to be working on.
Just the last couple of slides break down that data between the strands. So again, the strands are earth science, physical science, and life science. Oregon or national next gen science standards, sorry, they talk about three-dimensional. And that it's discussed in the packet of standards that I gave you where that comes from. I'm not a science teacher, so I'm not sure. I just go back to earth science, physical science, and life science. But I'm gonna guess three-dimensional means that we don't just want you to be able to say what this word means or pick it out of a list or have rote memorization of topics. We want you to be able to use that information with which to write about it, with which to plot it, with which to graph it. Yes, and connect them. So what you can see from this, and this is 2023 data. I did not, actually, did I check? It was similar data. So not much change between 23 and 24. that you can see in some of those areas where where fifth grade was above standard, at or near standard, or below standard. And the pie sections aren't that different in all those areas. So to go back to like, hey, what are we gonna focus on? I think we could pick any of these, focus on it, and then see the results, and then add the next one. Our fifth grade teachers are really pretty interested in doing a lot of the physical science. They said that is a place where they think that they could do some cool engaging activities, as well as the mystery science allows or provides the materials in the curriculum to support that. And so I think that at least fifth grade at Barnes Butte, that's kind of their goal. Like, let's focus in on physical science, and then we'll continue to add in, we'll do the other things. But when we're looking at our INBs and when we're looking at practicing OSAS, we will look at that particular area. I'll talk to the other fifth grade groups and see kind of what their notions are as well. But so that's fifth grade. Next one has, oh, this is 23-24. So again, the colors are a little bit different, but really the numbers are similar. So Eric, you can go on. So now what, some of that work that we're also gonna do is that matching of that fifth grade standards to middle school standards. So Julia and her group have kind of mapped all the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade standards, really prioritize some of the ones that they want to see fifth graders leave fifth grade coming into 6th grade with. And so now we're trying to match those, in this case, a physical science standard. Julia talked about, we'd really like for kids to be able to investigate and evaluate how fields exist between object exiting forces on each other within magnetic and electrical fields. What is that standard in fifth grade? And what does that mean that kids in fifth grade or teachers in fifth grade need to pull out of the curriculum to be able to do? So it's good work. It's actually fun work for me. Guess maybe that's why I'm doing this, but so good work and fun work. And then the same thing true on the next page for middle school to 9th grade. So, yep. So 8th grade standards matching them to high school standards. What you'll see again is that they have similar bases. They just get more rigorous in what they ask kids to be able to think about and be able to do with that information. And that's kind of how they are built, those standards, those 3 areas. I think that. Yeah. That's it. Again, the 3 reasons we were coming here today: update about curriculum, update about where we are in terms of vertical alignment, and then what our data is currently telling us about where we are with science across the district. Any questions? Any thoughts? Thank you for your work. Absolutely.
This is,
Very
this
enlightening.
has been very helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
extremely helpful.
Really wish I'd seen this presentation like 16 years ago.
Okay, so we will come back in July, ready for the board to hopefully approve an adoption around both a middle school and a high school science curriculum. Really been working hard with a couple of publishers to reserve some professional development dates for us, even though we don't have an official adoption. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that those are still going to be good for professional development, and that materials will be seamless between July and August 26th when we come back in the building, or when in August when we start working with teachers on some of this vertical alignment and the curriculum planning.
Thank you both, both you and the review committee.
Yeah.
Very good.
Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Skinner, too, for joining us.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Julia.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, school board, for having me tonight. it's a pleasure when I'm able to come and bring good news. And so, Oregon Department of Education, sends out a letter about compliance, non-compliance around targeted special education indicators. And so basically what the state does is they look over our data around like timely, accurate, information around special education from Crook County. It also talks about, disproportionality, like, are we over identifying boys, girls, race, ethnic groups? It also indicates, when we have initial evaluations for our kids on IEPs, are we evaluating them in the 60-day timeline that the state has set? As well as, making sure that our kiddos on IEPs 16 and over have transitional goals that indicate that, what are they doing? What are we doing as a school district to prepare them for college or work or whatnot? And so, this letter basically indicates, well, there's 4 indicators and it talks about if we've met, the indicators that the state looked at. Do we need assistance? Do we need interventions? Do we need substantial interventions as a district? And so this is a testament that we've met all those indicators as a district, based on the hard work of our special educators, our record clerks, our administrators, our district office folks, that have done a great job of getting paperwork and things in a timely fashion. And so that way we're able to submit these reports to the state with the information that they need. And so Dr. Yak and I just felt like it was a great idea to be able to just let you know that our special educators and specialists are working really, really hard to make sure that we're submitting good data. But really what it means is that we're serving our kids well. And so we have that because the state checks to determine, sure, there's always room for improvement, but we have a really strong team of dedicated educators that are dedicated to supporting our county and our students and our parents. And so that's kind of my report, is just to bring to you that we're doing a really good job and I'm proud to be a part of it. So thank you guys very much for your time, your support, and everything you guys do for our community.
Thanks for that, update, Grant.
Yeah, if you guys have any questions?
Yeah, just referencing back that earlier comment about the incoming 6th graders. And
Yeah.
percentage on IEP. What's the overall percentage of student body on IEP now? I don't know that I know that.
For the district?
Yeah.
I'd have to look. I don't have it off the top, like what the percentage is. I mean, obviously the state funds 11%.
Right.
I know that we're higher than that. I don't know I'd have to look. But like, I can say that fact for every district in the state right now. There's a lot of
That's been
it.
that way for a long time.
Yeah, exactly.
It's 12%.
Okay,
Well,
there you go. And so that's actually lower than I thought it would be, because I see districts hovering around 13-14%. And so, of course, funding hasn't gone up for that. And, it should, because, it makes it so it's more difficult for us to be able to serve our kids. But yeah,
So with this rising number of IEPs that we're seeing in the 6th grade incident,
yeah.
is that better diagnostics or is that?
Why is that happening?
Yeah, what's going on? there?
I think that there's a lot of reasons, because if you look at that grade band, that grade band was like hip deep in COVID. And so I'd say that that's probably one of the indicators of why we have an uptick in some of these elementary folks that are coming up. Because, they have something, there's a lot environmental, there's lots of different reasons, but that's what I would guess.
So I would just encourage you and Dr. Skinner, as she comes in, to think back to the fact that a few years ago, we did, and this was probably 10 years ago, we did an intervention where we went and we said, how many of these kids are really on IEP? How many of these kids just need extra supports to provide them, to get them to grade level and performance? And somebody slapped an IEP label that is just really a lack of instruction and instructional opportunity. And we really doubled down on that. And the number fell. It fell by several percentage points as we were able to move kids back into mainstream without an IEP label on it. And it was worth doing. I mean, I think we were all stunned by how effective stopping and opening your eyes was.
Yeah.
And maybe it's time, we haven't done it for a long time. Maybe
Sure.
it's time to redo that.
I mean, the
especially with
mechanism-
delays, COVID.
The mechanism to go to evaluation is care teams right now for our district. And so staff bring them to care teams and we determine what intervention, what tiered supports are we providing for the kids, so that way it's not straight to evaluation for an IEP, but I get what you're saying too, yeah. Over identification, that happens too, absolutely.
But
So,
I would think with evaluations every 2 years,
3 years.
or three, excuse me,
Yeah.
you should be able to catch some of that.
Yeah, absolutely. When you reevaluate to determine and your progress monitoring along the way to see what kind of progress they're making.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, that's true, but yeah, you're right. I mean, I have seen over identification.
But you
In
catch
other
what you look
places.
for.
Yeah.
If you're not looking, you're not catching.
Right.
You know, a lot of-
Yeah. Any other questions for me?
For this.
You guys are welcome.
Okay, we'll move on to the school board update. You'll see in your packet, as we heard earlier from Joel, Dr. Yuck is coming to the end, June 30th is his last day. And Dr. Skinner actually won't be beginning her employment with us until July 15th. So instead of the interim process, Joel and I researched the policy and we need to appoint an acting superintendent to serve July 1 to July 14. So that's where we're at.
Madam Chair, I'm going to appoint Joel Hoff as acting superintendent from July 1, 2024 to July 14, 2024. And beyond, should Dr. Skinner not report for duty on July 15.
You get a hard date, you gotta come back, Scott.
Got a lot of possibilities.
My second one. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. Okay. All those in favor of appointing Joel Hoff as the acting superintendent beginning July 1, 2024 through July 14th, 2024, say aye. 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 Any opposed? And our next item is the board retreat. And this date I got from Joel. So I don't know if it's flexible. I don't know how much movement there is in it.
Yeah, with,
I
working
think this
with
is-
Dr. Skinner and, Rob Hess and avoiding the fair date, I heard was a big one. So August 17th is a Saturday. And I'm hearing 10 to 6.
Oh,
So we're gonna get some work done.
I'm not available that day.
You're unavailable that day?
Yes.
Okay. We can go back to schedule with the fair date.
Is there a reason we're doing a Saturday instead of a?
Yeah, we talked a lot about that and we were thinking of trying to do it on a, weekday evening, but not to kind of dig into the level, we're hoping a Saturday would be best. The Saturday before is fair. Then the Saturday before that, I want to say is
That
we're still in
is,
July.
the 17th is the only Saturday I have. available.
Okay. So what we can do is we can go back and we were trying to avoid doing kind of an evening session because we wanted to dig deeper. But if that doesn't work, and then August 24th was the week before the weekend
Right.
before staff having back. So I think Sunday's probably off the table, so we will have to find evening.
I'm not available for the morning. That's when I'm gotta go 10.
Why do we have to do it in August?
That's typically when it's been before the start of the school year, but we could shift to, I know.
It's a lot of words for it because it's always been that way.
Are we doing aren't we doing a work session in July?
July 8th, we
Okay.
have a policy work session scheduled.
Oh,
July
policy.
15th, it is a board meeting.
So July 8th is
Did
policy.
we verify we have OSBA coming?
OSBA is coming for the July 8th, so.
Then don't
That's
schedule for
policy.
that.
Yeah.
Okay, I was just gonna say we could switch it, but
So I could go back and work with Dr. Skinner and Dr. Hess. It's not a big deal, and maybe we explore September Saturdays. I think the thinking was, and why it probably traditionally has been that way is, before the school year, hearing that board agenda and vision, getting those norms in place. So we could look at Saturday, or we could go back to the drawing board and say, maybe we do it on a weeknight evening, like a 4 to 8. And maybe we do 2. I think it was also bringing Rob, in from the valley.
And I mean, if it needs to be before 4, it needs to be before 4. And I'll just move it.
I can make anything on that week.
Okay, anything that week of 17th. And Jessica, it was the August 10th.
That's sale, but fifth, that week, the 5th through the 10th is all their week.
To the 10th is fair week. Okay.
I mean, they have the actual schedule out, so I can break down what my kids are a part of.
That's fine. We could go, so it looks like the week.
The following week
The week of the
is
12th.
when sports get going. That's really all that's.
Okay. The 12th, so. We probably have a board meeting August 12th.
We haven't done the dates, but that
We
was
haven't done
the
dates yet.
assumption. Would be the 10th day.
Okay. So maybe like the 14th or 15th in the evening.
And again, if we need to start before 4.
Okay. How about I work for the August 14th or 15th for the, Scott, that face is.
Well, the only problem is we're still missing a board member.
Yeah.
And we don't know what
Yeah.
our week looks like either, so.
Okay, let me, what I'll do is I'll bring back some more dates. We've got a July 8th work session will be the next time we're together. We figured that out, so I'll go back and get some more dates and get that figured out.
And we will move on to you.
I have a policy for your consideration. It's the first reading. First thing, I want to apologize, the policy version that was in the packet was wrong. That was this outdated version that I just sent the wrong one to Tammy, so I should put the corrected one on your places, and you know, if it's the correct one, in the title, the word free should be in red and with a strike. So I just wanted to walk through the various things on this policy proposal. The first thing is, I just mentioned the word free is a strikeout, and that is because when I looked at OSBA sample policy and all the other districts' policies that I looked at, this policy is called admission to athletic events. It's not called that anywhere but here. And so then the next piece is the proposal to bring back the gate admission fees. And the first couple lines on there, the $5 for adults and $3 for students who do not have a Cook County School District ISD card, that's the same as before. So this current year is the exception. This just restores it back to March. And then there's some new ideas on here, a family group fee, and then adding no charge for children 5 and younger. And then the no charge for adults age 65 and older used to be down below. And it said district residents, and so we're proposing that it's just anyone over 65 would be no charge. And then this new idea of season passes for each sport. And basically what it is just guessing, you know, kind of looking at how many events there are, home events there are normally, and then just putting a small discount in for purchasing a season pass in advance. And then the next piece where it says this policy does not apply to admission fees for play in or playoff games, which are set by OSAA. That's just a clarity thing. That's not something that we have any control over. It just puts it in policy so people know that that's the case. We, when OSAA has an event, they set the fee. And so that's one of the problems that we've had where if we don't have a gate admission fee usually, and then they come in for a play game, then we have to charge admission, people are confused and not very happy with that. And then the next two paragraphs are just copied from OSBA's recommended policy options. So that's just added in based on their recommendations. And some of the other school districts that I looked at. And then on the back page, we currently in our policy have a statement that CCMS athletes who are wearing a current jersey for the same sport as the event and must be under the supervision of a CCMS coach get in free. We're also requiring them to give Rob a list of players in advance. So he suggested that we add that to the policy just to make it a little bit more official that they need to be doing that. It kind of adds, keeps order. And then, the last piece is under accepted passes. It used to say, or currently says IMC, and that's no longer the name of our league. So rather than changing it to the current name of our league, Rob suggested just putting the league in there, which I think makes sense because if it changes again, then we don't have to worry about updating the name of it. So this will be just the first reading. And so they, of course, have the option to do a vote and everybody vote against it, or everybody votes for it. And even if everyone does vote for it, we don't have all five board members, so we'd be taking it to the next, another board meeting for adoption. Or you can suggest edits and let me know what your priorities are and I can make changes. I think even if we don't bring back gate fees, we probably need to make some of these changes just for clarity.
Or we could vote not to vote at all,
Yes, that's an option as well.
and keep things in there.
But you could keep things as they are, there's no fees.
There's no fees, that's correct.
What again is it supposed to, how much did you estimate this will generate?
$50,000 to $60,000. The money goes into the funded athletics fund, fund number 116, just to help pay for it. And that covers the cost of all sports, not just the sports that raise gate fees. So it covers the cost of high school and middle school coaches. It doesn't cover, but it helps to cover.
Goes towards.
Yeah, and that fund covers coaches, transportation, referees and officials. A little bit of equipment and uniforms, not everything, but a little bit. And then league dues. That every year we're having to increase the amount that we transfer from the general fund just because costs go up. We always have labor costs that go up. And then this year we saw a pretty intense increase in the cost of officials and referees. And then we saw a really large increase in transportation because we had several instances where the kids would not have been able to go to a contest if we hadn't chartered the bus. And so that has been very expensive.
I guess, Anna, I would like to see maybe a season pass for families as well, because you have one for adults and students. A family
What's a lifetime pass?
pass, like, I don't know, lifetime pass.
It's on there.
I'm gonna ask Mr. Bonner to help me with that question.
So a lifetime pass was before Debbie and I came even, and there were some lifetime passes, and they were really nice metal passes that came and they would present it and show Debbie. So it
Just
was prior to us, well, those have stopped showing up. We don't get them anymore. I haven't seen a lifetime pass in a while. But they existed once upon a time.
I didn't even see that on there.
You made it. I don't know what's missing. I promise. Oh, right here.
So, I mean, I don't have.
Okay.
It's on our list. That's why I'm like, I don't have a lifetime pass. I see it at the very bottom.
Is there value in having a line for a season pass for all sports? I mean, if you've got kids that are doing multiple,
Or like a yearly,
or just, I guess, yes, I mean, it'll get you in all 3 seasons.
yeah, like 24, 25.
Annual pass.
Yeah, annual,
Regardless
For all
of
sports.
yeah.
all sport.
Probably could look something like a lifetime pass, but it's a yearly pass.
Bring it down a little bit. It's an annual pass.
But kids can make them.
So, yeah, something like that. I would like to find maybe a balance and something like this to give back to the programs, with help in some of these funds that you're talking about that are rising, so I'd like to see some options, like those passes, maybe for the year, a family, something like that. So those would be my editorial questions.
I'd like to table this policy entirely. We have parents who pour hundreds, thousands of dollars and hours into their student athletes. They're the ones that get targeted by this. You know, you can show after doing all that time and all that money to take care of your kid, you're gonna come watch them play and see the fruits of your labor and gotta pay. Kids all walk in with an ASB sticker. Kids aren't affected. It's parents and grandparents that we're hitting on this. I don't understand. Oh, and by the way, there's 2 paragraphs here about how board members get in free. Let's be self-serving. How about we do something for our parents?
It says will be assessed the standard district admissions.
It also says,
So only if
Well,
you're going
if
in
you're
your
under if you're under
capacity.
your-
which one are you not?
You never know.
Yeah. You go for that, same you.
I don't know, we pay everywhere else we go for sports.
There
As a
is-
sports parent, if we go to any other school, I pay to watch my kid play anywhere else than Crook County. So for me, as a parent of an athlete, I would love to give more money back to Crook County than just all the other schools in our district. I'd rather see our schools, reap from that too, because I don't know of any other school this year that I didn't pay to watch any of my kids do sports.
And what are we gonna do here? How are we gonna enforce this? Is this against every sport? If I show up to watch the kids somewhere on the trail for a cross-country meet, is somebody gonna chase me down? The
No,
tennis
it's-
teams? What?
Really just the ones that have a gate to come into, like
Where does it
football,
say that?
volleyball.
You're right. I did
Doesn't
notice
say
in
that
some of
anywhere.
the other districts, they actually, which sports, they charge admission fees too. And this one doesn't, so that is a weakness in this version.
I just assumed it was the ones with gates.
Right.
Yeah, gates.
And what do we do with club sports? Are they covered or not? I don't know. Doesn't say.
Club is 50-50 for our kids that do club stuff. No, whether
It's
you
up to the.
pay or don't, yeah, if we go some places and play, we pay. And then other places we don't, but I know in school, I can't think of another school that hasn't charged me to watch my kid play other than Crook County.
And what does family? We're gonna give people a family pass up to 5, so, I mean, Pam's got a grandmother and a mother and hangers on, and who knows what in her family, which 5 get in and call themselves family?
Only 5, no.
Adopted family, foster family, what's the definition of family?
Well.
It's not
I
ready to
can
go.
tell you
home.
what the definition of family is.
ORS defines family.
Yep. That's open.
Then you have to say according to.
According to, Bill.
Because the ticket taker has to figure this out at minimum.
This is why policy is fun, because different people think of different things. And if you can get all those things right, you can have a good list.
That's the reason he wants to just table this forever.
Right. And why it is perfect.
So currently, there's funds built in, except for somewhere else to cover all those costs.
So the plan was, yes, that there would be funds built in to cover all those costs, but what has happened is we our costs have exceeded the plan. So that fund will be in the negative at the end of the year, and so that's part of the last month's budget adjustment that we made, so that we can transfer a little bit more money out of the general fund in order to cover those costs. I think it's gonna be over 100,000.
And is that just because it's rising?
I heard board member Edgerly say in a listening session that we have so much money, we can cover $17 million in facilities costs. I don't know why we suddenly need 59,000.
How is, I would like to see some of the revisions. Ideas that were brought forward in.
Do you want to take action as a board on what you want me to do, or do you want to just bring it back next time and then you take action as a board next time?
Yeah, I mean. Yeah, one that wants to table it, I wouldn't, the way it's, I don't know that I would want to take a vote the way it's written. Nobody wants to say
We're
that.
missing some information too.
Yeah, so I think it needs
Clarification.
it needs brought back.
If we table it, that implies I bring it back.
And here's my question. We did not have gate fees this last year, right? This current year. So, and that's putting us to a potential negative status.
So that's contributing to it,
Yes, okay. That
but
was
that's not the whole,
yeah, okay.
it's just
Rising costs and all.
What
What
did
you
you say?
mentioned.
If
So-
we table it, what?
if we say we're gonna, if you all tell me we're tabling it, that implies that I'm bringing it back. till
No,
next
it's not.
time. So let's get clarity on
The
that then.
parliamentary procedure says if you table it, then it has to take a motion to take it off the table before we bring it back up again.
Okay.
Table means we lay it aside until we're ready to take it back up again.
We table it with the
Postpone
returning
indefinitely
date.
means we
Right.
kill it.
So it depends on what the date
As
is.
long as I'm aware of what the board wants as a body,
Hannah will do
because
that.
I'm getting conflicting,
I know what. That's-
and I can't take direction from one board member, so I just need the board as a body to tell me what you all want, and then I can make a lot of things happen from what we want.
I think. Another thing, Anna, with the policy, if you really define the sports, I think you run into. You know, if you're charging. But just football, parents, volleyball, basketball, and wrestling, well, why does? Soccer, cross country and everyone else get to share those funds? So I think we do run into a bit of that. We're really gonna,
Do they charge for softball and baseball?
Only at play off and play in games.
Okay, which is,
not us, that's
that's right.
Well, play in games is the league direction. A lot of the play in funds go directly to the league when they disseminate that amongst the teams of the league. And playoff is always the whole. And then there's endowment games. Endowment games also go to list of the league.
and then when we charge for club sports, how does that work? Right, like,
Club sports are on their own, if they charge a fee, they keep that money.
so like boys volleyball, for instance, is a club sport, so they wouldn't fall under our policy. So if they charge, it just goes into their, right,
Yeah, because they're not funded, they don't have any funding from that funded athletics.
Goes to them, right?
And where does it make that distinction in these policies?
right,
That's what we're trying to.
that's, we're trying
Line
to,
out.
trying to line out, if we're gonna have Anna, if we had her bring it back, she's trying to get clarity on what she would need direction on.
I'm fine with agreeing with Scott, like that's, we can address it later with everything that we need to.
And then here's Steve.
He's supporting the motion. on the table, and hasn't been made yet.
That's my motions.
But it's getting there.
There are a couple of minor edits with the board, well, if you do decide to table, would you mind if I bring a new policy back with just those minor edits?
Being what, like,
Meaning,
like
the
IMC.
IMC, and then adding that the roster of athletes must be provided. And taking the free out of it.
But who's selling the pass? Why would we accept passes that we're not charging for? Why would we even?
It's true, we could just delete the whole policy.
What's the what is the
Well, I'm just-
benefit of the roster of athletes?
Who gets it?
It's the benefit of having a roster of the middle school athletes.
Yeah, so, why that came about is, the first time we tried that, to let the youth athletes in, it was chaos, and they did not show up with parents, they did not show up, with anyone, we didn't know who was supposed to be there, as part of that deal, so it wasn't really fair to our gatekeepers, and to Debbie, who was trying to keep sense of it all, and that, so then working with the coaches, I asked them to give me a roster of their athletes, and in doing that, I was able to say, coaches, now you're responsible for these rosters, so then they sat with coaches, and they got the experience that the coaches wanted them to have, part of the team, and it was really good, so we went to the supply a roster list of names.
And that works.
And it worked, and I would really like to keep that, yes.
Madam Chairman, I move to adopt DFEA on first read, deleting the word free, or adding back the word free, deleting all the blue type on the front page, deleting the duplicated section around district residents 65 years of age and older, keeping the renumbering, and adding the blue language on the backside under number 3 and number 4. Renumber 3 and renumber 4. Well, that's on the backside, there is one. But I deleted all the type on that side. Except for the renumbers. So the minimal required edits.
Do we have a second?
First. It's an alternative to take that.
I'm hearing no second.
I will say, and we'll come back as a clean version of the inventory. Reading again, making sure that all of this.
Yeah. Okay, so with a second, we have time for discussion.
So I have a question. Anna has made a comment at the beginning of this that this is just a read because we need all 5 board members. Is that correct?
That happens with the next, for the second reading.
Oh, for the second read.
It cannot pass this one because we don't have unanimous consent on the
Okay.
first reading.
I just
We
wanted
can't have
clarification.
unanimous Consent, because we got one missing,
Okay.
unless Cheyenne magically appears on the screen.
And all 5 votes affirmative.
We're in a discussion.
Yeah,
I think I got what you said, Scott.
Under,
All those in favor of accepting policy DFEA to have the word free, X out all the blue on the front, keeping the roster on 3 and keeping board number changed to league, say aye.
aye.
Any opposed? Say aye. Aye. We will look for it to be brought back, Anna.
No, Madam Chair, I object to that. There is not a motion to pass it. You don't bring it back for a second reading if you didn't pass it on the first reading.
We couldn't pass it on the first read, we don't know about that.
You didn't even get a majority.
That's true.
You got it. You actually have a motion. You now have a split vote to defeat it. Or to pass it.
Then we pass it without all 5 on the first reading.
You can't.
Good.
So then it goes away
So if it doesn't pass, nothing happens.
because you haven't passed the first reading. You can't have a second reading if you don't pass the first reading.
Hey, Anna.
So you might want to switch your vote and then try and amend it at the second reading to put your language back in. That's how you keep it alive.
So we're accepting your language to bring it back a second time to change
So
your
that would
language?
It'll come back with-
It would amend it at the second reading, you don't have to decision. You might have a chance to get it free. Because the next vote will not have to be unanimous. The next vote will be majority.
And
But
if that
it would be missing,
Go
it
ahead.
would be missing everything for a vote.
Which is why you have to amend it back in.
That's what he's saying. He wants to take it out now. And then at the next one, we would make a motion to put it all back in with all the
That's
things.
the only way we can keep it alive at this point. And it's fine with me if it dies, but. I'm being nice and telling you how I think happened
Okay,
against my better
So
judgment.
he's telling us where his battleship is. We're not thinking, he's not thinking ours. Bill's got it. Mhm.
I'm not giving.
okay,
Bill wants to.
No.
Go ahead.
Let this play out.
You know what? Each popcorn and.
I don't know how you amend the vote after. it's
You just
finished.
announced you are changing your vote.
Because a no vote can rescind it.
Right. Switch your vote, but you haven't announced it as.
I just. Thing.
You change your vote. Or not.
Okay. I just,
a lot of trust going on right now.
Consider if that is.
Yeah,
If you voted no, you can make a motion to reconsider.
Well, you can make a motion to reconsider, but you or I would have to make it. I'm sorry, those two would have to make it. Yeah, those two would have to make it.
I tell you, I'm not
Only the
good
person who
meetings.
votes in the negative can reconsider.
Please, Joe.
Yes, to change it.
Tell me.
No, that.
I thought it was if the vote went in your
That's right,
favor.
that's right. Mhm.
So either one is called motion. to
In this
reconsider.
case, the motion to reconsider.
You voted no, and then we make that motion because you'd like to change your vote to yes.
Okay, but I have,
You can just change your vote, the record's still open.
I'm just intrigued.
I am.
Could the board chair in the agenda setting use their discretion to bring the policy back though?
I don't think so, because it didn't pass on the first reading. Since it didn't pass, it failed. It needs to pass in order to move to a second reading. So somebody changes their vote, then brings it forward, which keeps it alive to do whatever we want to do with the next meeting.
Or we could do another motion,
That's a motion to reconsider.
Yeah, we can do a motion to consider.
So really, we should have no first readings of policies when the board member is gonna be gone.
It does complicate, yes, that is true.
That's why there was no policies on here, so.
Yeah.
I was right in that instance. Now I've learned why I was right, so.
Although I've also seen that fail on you because one board member abstains and then you're right back to the same problem.
No, that's true. Okay. So I would need to amend my vote. To be.
Are you allowed just to amend the vote or do we have to
You just
do?
look at Tammy and say, I'm changing my vote to whatever, and then it happens. Because Tammy has magic fingers.
Did you?
No, just be a majority,
Okay,
so, okay.
I will amend my vote.
So now it would come back in the next meeting with just the editorial changes we made. But if you want to lay on the table, Anna, a piece of paper that has all the the stuff we dropped right next to it, then we would know how to propose to put this language back in. If that's what people want to do at the next meeting. Those words I doubt.
I don't
Both
think-
versions, well,
I don't think he-
yes, the language. Yeah, we could just bring this one back.
I'm guessing Anna does, she's.
I'm assuming that, yes.
Okay. Okay,
Maybe she's still. I think she had one. It's a fun side, please.
yeah,
Learning curve.
I was on all the policy stuff, so I feel better, although I didn't understand all of that, but.
Okay, so I'm.
Okay, Anna, we'll move to the finance report.
As usual, finance report is in the packet, as well as posted online. I just want to call attention to the third page in the packet. It's the one that I usually talk about. It's this general fund statement of revenue and expenditures. A couple new things that you haven't seen yet this year. The first one is the line 5. The state school fund May adjustment. In May every year, ODE finalizes the state school fund from the prior year. So this is for 22-23. we actually ended up owing back to OBE about 369,000. And the reason for that is because they used the third period ABM to pay us, and then we have a lot of early graduates. And so then when we finally, over the summer, submit our final ADM, our ADM goes down quite a bit. I had actually already estimated about a $205,000 payable. So it really only hit us by the difference, which was about 165,000. But I've been all year just including that estimate in the line above. So for me, it wasn't an impact. It wasn't anything that did anything bad to us because I was pretty much expecting it all year. But now you actually see it there. And then the second thing is forest fees. Those come in pretty late in the year, and I'm always trying to estimate what they're gonna be. And they always go down. For as long as I've worked here, it's been 95% of the year before, or 85 or 75% of the year before. This year, we received 149,000, almost 150,000 more than we had budgeted. So the forest fees were just a lot higher than what we expected. And that is federal money that comes in. It's based on the idea that communities that used to have a lot of forestry revenue. This is just a way to kind of backfill that. So that's in there now as well. That actually almost made up for the state school fund adjustment that is just. So those are only two things on here that I wanted to mention. So if you have any questions on the finance report, you can ask us now or any time. Oh, one other thing I did want to mention you, Scott, you asked what the percentage of SPED students. And on this colorful page towards the back of the finance report, every month I update the SPED student percentages. And I do that for each school, except for some schools, I don't put the actual number just because they're such a small school. If you knew exactly the number, you would be able to maybe figure out who those students were. So, and then down at the bottom is the 12% is the number of students who are on an IEP or identified as SPED versus the total enrollment. And then there's just some other statistics on here that you may find useful at any point, and I update those periodically.
I do want to comment on that issue about the early graduation. That had been raised before we had the board change. The board had been talking about that because Anna was even then starting to say a lot of early graduates, and it's starting to affect the bottom line. And the previous board's position, and I think it was the right one that the board did support, was that nobody wants to control the decisions that families and students make, but we should try and make kids want to complete the full 4 years. So give them that athletic experience, give them that enrichment, point out the benefits of getting your college credits while you're in high school. Somebody else is paying for them before you go to university and you get paid for them, whatever else we could come up with. And I think that's a theme we don't want to drop as we do our strategic planning, because the number is getting larger. Kids have found ways to accelerate. We've made that easy and good for them. They want to get on with their lives. When you're a senior, you don't have time to waste. No, those 80 years you've got stretched in front of you, you got to get started. So I think that's something we can come back to and focus on, or this problem is going to catch up with us and become a real problem.
Is there a statewide, after all state schools, I mean, having that early graduation problem also?
I'm not.
I've heard about it at OSBA.
Yeah, I don't know of any.
What they were reporting at OSBA is that the COVID years, when we taught everybody how to do online education, showed them where to go get it, it just was like rocket fuel on the early graduation movement. Plus, we got a whole group of kids that were like, after that, we're done with school. We don't know if that's long-term or short-term, but certainly there was a whole group that had a strong interest in leaving that whole chapter going behind. So maybe that'll slow down.
We had tacked onto our AP committee, senior year opportunities committee. I'd highly recommend we continue that. Because there's still some work to do, and senior parents can save thousands and thousands of dollars if their kids stick around and do dual credit classes.
So there's one other thing under finance that I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of. Kind of reflect on May, we had a bond measure on ballot that didn't pass. And so just kind of looking towards the future. We can still use our current facilities assessment to apply for the Austin grant in November if we want to. And so I don't want you to do anything tonight, I just want to put this in your heads. November is a presidential election and that has been shown to be successful for a lot of school districts in the past, just because there's no voters. If we think that that would be worth considering, we could revive the bond committee, which would be in July, which would be next month when the board appoints all the committee members. The thing that I want you to know is that July 1st is when we have to notify ODE if we plan to apply for the Austin grant, and we have to apply by July 15th. And Leland can then start getting the bond committee together if the board is interested in pursuing. To us, it makes sense for us to go ahead and apply and just make sure that we don't miss that opportunity to apply. And then if we don't go out for a bond measure, it's fine. But that's kind of where we're headed with that.
It doesn't cost you anything, correct?
No cost.
Okay.
And that bond can be applied, it doesn't matter how big the bond is, it's
Right,
the same amount of money, but it just offsets your cost.
Right.
You have to money.
exactly. The most you can get is $6 million. So as long as we say we're gonna go out for a bond for at least $6 million, we can apply.
So you just need a motion to approve the Austin grant, apply for the Austin grant. We want to use it on our heads, or what do you?
We don't need to, if you did that, that would be awesome. No pun intended. But really, I just want to know if you object.
Maybe we apply for the Austin.
Grant. I second that.
All those in favor of Anna or Leland applying for the awesome grant?
Yeah.
You're awesome too. Say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Keep going.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up.
So Anna, while we have this out, where do I find the current enrollment numbers? Because this has been brought up more than once. Grizzly Mountain's numbers are always 163. So where do we find their actual enrollment? Because it's not
It's the
160.
K-8 number. I believe, we want to double check with Johnny and Linda Hutchins. I believe that's the K-8 number because I think those.
I can do that rather than them checking with. And so maybe I just need to change the enrollment report that's in 4.5. You guys need to change how that looks.
I think
Because-
everyone gets fixated on this page and it's always the same numbers. And
Yes.
so I'm trying to,
This is always going to be the same numbers
Right.
because this is the October 1st enrollment. But the current enrollment is always updated and it's in the consent agenda every month.
there you go, consent agenda.
Yeah, and right now it says Grizzly Mountain Home Week is 195. So those are the kids
And
that
that's
have,
K through 8, or that is.
that's
all
all.
Should be, where it gets a little kind of nuanced is, some of those students are in hybrid schedules, so if they're taking 4 classes at the high school and 3 through Grizzly, they get counted to the high school, so there's a little kind of subtle, technical stuff that goes on, so.
But every school has, or sorry, every student has one school that is their main school. And the way I remember the report is grab every single data element, which is a student, every single student in a list, and whatever school is their main school, that's where they land on that report.
That's been the question that continues to come each month. So I thought, well, we have it up.
Yes, thank you.
So in the consent agenda is where they can find
Yes,
the actual for them.
the actual current month's emission. Okay, do I can move to the next topic, which is a resolution. Basically, what's going on here is we have a special fund for our debt service for the general obligation bonds. Every year I have to estimate how much taxes will come in and have the tax assessor assess those taxes. And it's a $2 million fund, and this year it's gonna be short by about $4,000. Which means we'll need to borrow money from the general fund just until early July. there will be June tax receipts that come in that will more than cover that, but we just won't receive it until July 1st or 2nd. So, in fund accounting, which is what we have, funds borrow from each other all the time. That's the constant thing. It's just how it works. But when it's a debt service fund, there's a special budget law that says you have to have a certain resolution. So that's what I'm proposing here. And basically what it says is the general fund will loan that fund just until the money comes in, and then it pays that general fund back. And all is fine. One thing I did note in here is the only way to eliminate all risk of this ever happening is to assess too much taxes, basically over assess taxes. And I don't want to do that to the taxpayers, plus you could get in legal trouble.
Madam Chairman, this is an incredibly routine motion. I move to adopt resolution 12/23/24.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of adopting resolution number 12-2023, 2024, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you. Thank you.
And then before you leave, I'm holding a date on my calendar for June 28th, I think, for year-end special meeting for year-end adjustments. Do you think that's gonna be necessary?
Well, I always hope it's not going to be necessary. There was, I think it was last year, we ended up having to use that date and we did it by Zoom. So do you have a conflict?
Not yet.
Okay.
I'm pretty good at developing them.
Okay. If it does arise and the June 28th date doesn't work, we could find another time within that time frame that everyone could just zoom in. I think when we did that last year, it was 4 minutes.
Right, so I was gonna suggest if we do end up having to do that, may I suggest we use the Zoom option again, because it's
That's
just
rescue.
way easier for a 2-minute meeting rather than set this all up.
I would need Zoom for the 28th because we have wrestling.
You can do the whole meeting.
I just try really hard to not need that meeting.
Yeah. But sometimes. you do.
Sometimes things happen that are unexpected.
I think we could potentially have that via Zoom. Would be a better fit for everyone.
I think that'd be good.
Yumi, did you have any public comment cards to?
I did not receive any.
So do we have anyone that has a public comment card that didn't get turned in? Seeing that, do we have anyone online, Eric?
No.
Okay. Seeing that we have no public comment here present or online. Over that. Our upcoming dates, last day of school, K through 11 is June 13th. It is a half day. We have a school board work session July 8th, 4:30 here. Our next school board meeting is July 15th at 6:30 here. And this meeting is adjourned. This is the smallest.
Hit on the gavel.
Smallest